Next question comes from Sean Brokenshire.
Thanks, Tony. This is for Angry Anderson. Having travelled go back to where you came from, to Kabul, and felt firsthand the fear of being attacked, and having witnessed the lack of places where you could officially seek asylum within Afghanistan or any of its neighbouring countries, do you now accept that people who flee have no alternative but to keep travelling until they reach a Refugee Convention signatory country like Australia by any means necessary?
Yeah. Until we have a responsible government that puts a responsible structure in place to have those people be able to, first of all, get out of Afghanistan so that their lives are no longer in danger, and whether it's a place established within Afghanistan or in like an intermediary country like Indonesia, where a lot of them go, and the authorities do, to their credit, they sort of look the other way in most cases because there's a lot of Afghans there in this limbo situation. But yes, I agree entirely. I mean, I can understand having gone there and lived with those people, sat at their tables and eaten their food, met their children, listened to their stories. I understand. I get it. I get it entirely why they get on boats. I just wish they didn't have to. And, I mean, that's just on the humanitarian level alone. I mean, the loss of life is far greater than the official figures will have us believe. Well, again, anecdotal. We spoke to Indonesian fishermen who put the number at, in some cases, maybe 1 in 3 boats, but certainly 1 in 5. Now, if you take 1 in 5, like for every 5 boats or 4 boats that get here, 1 is lost. That's an horrific loss of life. But yes, I agree.
I'm going to interrupt you because your sympathy, which has been generated by going there, doesn't reflect what you said before you went there. Let's quickly remind you and our audience what you said before you took that journey to Afghanistan.
I don't accept the boat people at all. Don't tell me about what a hard time you had. The first thing you've shown me is no sense of respect. End of story. Don't bother. Because as soon as you get here, we're chucking you on a cattle train or a plane or a ship and you're going home.
Now, with respect, that probably does pretty much reflect the government's position, except for the cattle train bit. But you know, you've changed your position. Why? Why did you say that then and this now?
Because experience is, education is enlightenment. And the one simple dynamic that I didn't understand, which, you know, you can't blame the press for everything, most things, but the one thing that wasn't explained to me as a citizen of this country is the simple dynamics of the situation. And the Hazari people are persecuted. They're Islamic people or Muslims persecuted by other, you know, extremists, thugs hired and paid by the Taliban and other extremist groups in their own country. They actually are declared non-people in their own country. Now, that simple thing, when you actually go there and you start to just understand just a little about the way the cultural structure of the country is, like which we don't hear.
So let's quickly ask you this question before I move on to the rest of the panels. Do you believe, having gone and visited the place and seen those things, that governments, successive governments, have played on the ignorance of people about that?
Yeah, yeah. I think they've used or allowed the ignorance. I'm not too sure played is the proper turn of phrase, but the one thing that really, really alarmed all of us that went there, the 3 of us particularly that went to Afghanistan, but it's the same situation in Africa, there is no government so far has put into place a structure that allows these people to not have to get on boats. And still to this day, there's actually no real... There's no avenues where they can go and apply and they can, you know, put their name
The term we hear is these people are queue jumpers. That's the one that's been used most often.
Yeah.
You say there's no queue?
Well, no, I don't agree with that. I think you know when you see, I met some people in Victoria about 5 or 6 years ago, And they were definitely critical of people coming here on boats, African people, and because they were a fragmented family. And they had to wait 5 years of not knowing whether they're going to be reunited. The father had to flee Africa, by the way, to get his 2 sons out so the militia wouldn't press them into service. So he bolted with the kids and left the wife there in a camp. Now, his argument was, why are these people coming here in boats and my wife and my 2 daughters are somewhere in a camp and they are not being considered? You know, he had an argument too, if you know what I'm saying. So,
Yeah, all right, I want to hear from this. Newton Sawney.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, all of this, because I remember being here in 2001 and, it was in 2001, and the whole arguments about Christmas Island and what was going on at the time. It amazed me because I was, a little while later, I was at the Garma Festival with Mundawai Yunupingu. And I remember being there, and I was standing next to Mundawai Yunupingu, and Phil Ruddock was actually talking about the boat people. And I remember as he was talking and saying it's a terrible thing, they're coming over here. And it was sounding more like fear of being overrun by foreigners than it sounded anything to do with concern about the welfare of any of those people. And Mundawai Yunupingu, right next to me, just said, "But you are the boat people." Which I thought was quite funny. But it's kind of, I mean, you know, this is what I mean. I think it's about fear of the other, and that's what this always boils down to. It's what goes on with our government. As soon as we had the last general election, every time there's an economic downturn, it's about blaming the other. And, you know, people don't recognise what asylum seekers are. You know, they stigmatise them with, you know, and people don't recognise what asylum is. It's, you know, people are seeking asylum from potential death, or, you know, so as human beings, as humanitarians, or any civilised society, should be trying to help those people. I don't understand any other position.
Tara Moss.
Well, my mum and my Oma and Opa were all refugees. They left Europe. My Opa had been taken by the Nazis and put into a munitions factory. They rounded up all the men in Holland at that time and sent them to various factories. And he actually escaped from that factory, from the Nazis, and, you know, risked his life doing so. And they came to Canada as soon as they could. And in fact, there was a boat leaving for Australia one day and Canada the next day. The boat leaving for Canada left the day before. And that's why I was born in Canada. You know, let's not forget that these people smugglers, I mean, Schindler was a people smuggler. Let's not forget that refugees...
Schindler wasn't taking the life savings of Jews in order to save their lives.
No,
that's one of the differences. It runs a kind of business, and a pretty brutal one at that.
Sure, but there also, you know, there is a history of people helping one another to get other human beings out of war-torn situations, out of situations of devastation. And I think when we have this kind of unhelpful public debate where we dehumanize refugees, asylum seekers, and these people smugglers, I mean, you were there, Angry, you changed your views when you met these fishermen, these Indonesian boys on these boats that are being sent out. You know, we really demonize these people, and I think we need to remember that these are human beings. They are not taking this journey lightly. They're trying to save their lives and make a better life for their family. And that's what my family did, and I'm grateful that they did. You know, I was raised in a wonderful world in Canada, in a very free and fabulous country. And we have a very lucky country here in Australia that I'm happy to be a citizen of now. And I feel like, you know, we have the ability to share that with people, and it's the right thing to do.
Tony Burke.
There's an extra dimension, and I don't accept your comment earlier, Tony, about the way the government's argued this. I just don't accept that. I do not believe for a minute that it's been a queue jumpers argument from the government. It has been for a very real part, and it was the cabinet debate, it was the caucus debate, it was the debate in the parliament about how do you stop the drownings. Now, my electorate, my local area where I live, is where a very large number of people who, if they're successful in getting refugee status, settle as, you know, the people I share my local shopping centre with. Last week, I think it was Thursday, I would have had a dozen people in my office all of them with the date they received phone calls from relatives who they haven't heard from for 6 weeks, and they had those phone calls when their relatives were already on a boat of a bit over 60 people. Now, the government has no record of what happened to this boat. We don't know. The humanity of those people, and the relatives were there in my office, and they were still clinging to hope. But their story is part of the humanity of this debate too. And, you know, if we say we've got to stop the boats because we're fearful of people, I'm not in that debate. No. But if we're trying to stop people putting their lives at risk on the high seas, and we're trying to stop the faces of the relatives who I had in my office last week, that is a genuine and decent public policy debate to have and to try to get on the right side of.
And I'll just quickly hear from Fiona. Keep it brief. We've got another question to come to if we can. Sorry about that.
And I don't think it is, in general, fear. I really don't think it is. Look, I think as a nation we have a responsibility to do what we can to help people that are in worse circumstances than us. And there are something like 40 million displaced people around the nation. And we do have a responsibility to do that. I think we should increase our humanitarian level, our intake. I think we should. I think it's the right thing to do. But it has to be done in an orderly process. We have every right to protect our borders, and we have every right to know who's coming into this nation and to manage that appropriately.
Just to quickly, because we saw the video of what you said there, do you feel that you damaged the public debate by saying that?
No.
And why did you say it then?
Because I think there's so many people.
Because I mean, I know on SBS you said I said it to get the gig. On the television show.
Well, that was my clumsy attempt at being humorous.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not very good at it. The moment of levity that I was trying to bring to it was lost completely, entirely, so inadequate as a comedian. But no, because that's the way a lot of people do speak, and that's a kind of, you know, speak through people or whatever, but represent a certain view. And that was my view at the time. Now, that has changed because of an experience that I had. Now, without that experience, which is what now I want to tell people, is that we need to have more information for a start, which is again why I'm critical of the press. But no, experience, education enlightens people, and you have to be open to receive that enlightenment.
Okay, we're running out of time quite quickly. Our last question comes from Elijah Perrier.
Oh yeah, hi. I've got a question for Nitin. It's about.
See, sorry, could you?
Hi.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
fine.
it's about multiculturalism in Britain and around the world. I was wondering whether you think that for all its successes, sometimes the progressive movement can have a rather romantic view of cultural identity, in a way that can sometimes pigeonhole people. Do you think that sometimes holding on to identity can actually hold people back?
Well, it's interesting because actually multiculturalism is sometimes seen as some kind of debate platform, and as David Cameron actually was speaking out in condemnation, it seemed, of multiculturalism. Multiculturalism is a default position. Apartheid in South Africa was multicultural. There were cultures coexisting. It doesn't mean it was a good thing. Edward Said, for example, in Orientalism, he talked about the notion of pluralism and the idea that you had equal opportunity, anti-racism and multiculturalism existing together, and that's how you worked on a society which was balanced in relation to race issues. And I think, that's what I'd look at. So within pluralism, you actually respect people's individual identity, and I would be in favour of people having the opportunity to integrate into society rather than being assimilated. And that's, there's a big difference. And so you can hang on to your identity. You don't have to have it robbed of you by the culture that you're going into. Otherwise, why isn't everyone here adopting Indigenous culture, by the way? So it's kind of, I do think that everyone has a right to hold on to their cultural identity, in terms of wherever they come from. They have that right. But at the same time, it's about working together and respecting other people. And I think that's how you work in a balanced society.
I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel on that. I'm being told that's all we have time for. We've run out of time. Please